Welcome to the Village Green. I'm Nancy Gardner, your host. We talk about things that affect the environment in Newport Beach, and today we've got two subjects that really do touch on the environment. One is a study that Coastkeeper has done about use of the beach down by the mouth of the Santa Ana River. And the second is how our major departments responded to the oil spill. Well, I'm here on a very windy day, windy autumn day. Autumn has just arrived, I think.
Officially, as of last night.
With Suzanne Welsh, who is the volunteer coordinator for Coastkeeper. You're all familiar with Coastkeeper, who's done so much to protect the beaches and our oceans and inland as well. You've got a lot of programs.
We do.
We're here at the River Jetty mouth to talk about a study you've done, because there have been a lot of complaints about uses and we'll say misuses of the beach. So tell us a bit about the study, what prompted it, and what you learned.
Well, we're here at the Santa Ana River mouth, and our study looks at the human use of the area. It was actually kind of brought about because, it's a well-known issue as to disagreements as to how best to use this area and then the sensitive species that are here. And we were approached by the city to apply for a community grants program to have a human use study that kind of mirrored our ongoing human use study, what's called MPA Watch, where we look at the marine protected areas in the county. And what they really wanted to see is how people are using this area recreationally, because there is a lot of overstatements and understatements and lack of clarity from different agencies.
Okay, let me stop right there, because
Okay.
I think we should set the stage a little bit better than we have so far. My fault. This isn't just like if you go down by the pier, it's all sand, and this is not quite the same because there are sensitive dune areas, there are sensitive areas for birds. So it wasn't just a matter of when people wanted to look at the beach use. It wasn't a matter of just, okay, do we have more people body surfing or more people board surfing? It was, how are we interacting with some of these sensitive areas as we use the beach?
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly, because it's a sensitive habitat area for both California least terns, which are a federally endangered species, and then western snowy plovers, which are a federally threatened species, which people may have seen because several of them were oiled with the recent oil spill, and they're adorable and make for good Instagram stories. They're all doing well, but this area is used by them for nesting, and in the case of western snowy plovers, it is used for foraging year-round. So we have a population in Orange County that's pretty static. They might move up to Bolsa Chica, they might move down to Crystal Cove State Park, but they tend to just kind of come along the beach, and what they're doing is they're utilizing the seaweed that washes up on the beach to eat the invertebrates in it. And so then the issue is less so with people walking on the beach, but more so with dogs on the beach, because even though our dogs may not be a direct threat to them in our eyes, these are species that have co-evolved over tens of thousands of years with coyotes, which are very much a threat to them, their chicks, and their nests.
Yeah, I can say I have a dog. He's a bird dog, so obviously he would be pointing everything here, but a lot of it's just people. As a dog owner, we want our dogs to have fun. And what's more fun than letting them run around or throwing balls to them? But that doesn't necessarily work very well with some of these habitats.
Exactly. And then between, that issue of the sensitive habitat, the flood channel itself also isn't incredibly safe. It's not an area that was ever built for people to recreate in. So that's why, the county has signs up that say that access to the flood control channel is illegal, because according to county ordinances, it is. I think that there was even an instance, maybe 5 years ago, where a woman was out here with her dog, and her dog unfortunately passed away because the channel wasn't built with safety in mind. It was built with function and utility and access for work crews.
And it's misleading, like so many areas where it looks so harmless, and yet obviously in a storm it's not harmless. Got a lot of water coming down, but even then I think there are pipes and things and all sorts of things that could be a peril. But if you have a dog who loves the water, this is, boy, it's tempting.
Yeah, it's very tempting. And, it's tough in Newport because the closest dog beach is on the other side of Main Street, which I find inaccessible during the summer. It's a little far with summer traffic. And so I definitely understand, why people want to come out here. It looks like a low current area that's really great for dogs. And some people even bring their families down here to swim, which is like also maybe not a great idea for safety issues, but also water quality issues for your kids. And really, it was the different agencies out here saying we want like a real picture of what's happening, and we want to hear what the real use of the area is, and like how many people are out here with their dogs.
An important point, because I don't come down here. I'm on Corona Del Mar, but I envisioned from the pictures I saw and just the tales I heard that there should be 200 dogs here or something. So there may be, but there may not be. But they wanted to know exactly.
Exactly, because you were seeing pictures where it looked like chaos out here, complete bedlam. And then you were also hearing reports from staff people who would come down on a day maybe like this, where there is one dog off in the distance, and it's really the time of day, the day of the week, and then the weather. Like, no one wants to be out here when it's super windy or raining or anything like that. We're not built for that out here.
So if we should first all clarify the municipal ordinance for dogs in Newport Beach. The dogs can be on the beach before 10 in the morning and after 4 in the afternoon. 4:30 in the afternoon. But they are to be on a leash, because we are a city of leash laws. That wherever a dog is, except in a dog park, we are supposed to be on a leash.
Exactly. And then to complicate it, in the flood control channel, they don't want anyone there at any time, so definitely no dogs allowed. And then in the property across the river, we have California State Parks, and they allow dogs on paved paths only and in parking lots, and have not allowed dogs on beaches since the inception of the California State Park system.
Yeah, so there's always, when you get different agencies, you get these different regulations. And then there's also, when it comes time to enforcement, there are different issues as well, because the Newport Beach police could come and do one thing, but they can't do something over there, and that sort of thing.
And there are MOUs, like memorandums of understanding, where the county and the city, or the county and the state can come into agreements to do enforcement, but it's a lot of red tape and bureaucratic hoops to jump through. And if there's no need for it, the agencies are a little bit less willing to do it. So like we're out here trying to demonstrate the need of that kind of action.
Okay, so how did you conduct the study? What was done?
We did what are called snapshot surveys, where we basically come out here, and I have it in my head now, but we have a map of the different property lines, and we would kind of look at what the different property lines are between Tower 74, which is where we're right next to the fence line on the other side, and then kind of just look at each property, and then as we wrote down everything, we'd move on to the next one, and then every 30 minutes or so, we would continue to take those surveys. So it would basically just be as if someone came out here with a nice camera, took a photo of what everyone was doing, wrote it down, and then walked away for a little bit. So that way, we can kind of get a picture of what's happening at a moment in time.
And how long did you do this?
We started in February of this year. It's still ongoing. Our first report that's on our website was from February to June. And we used the findings of that report to apply for additional funding, and we're granted it as of 2 weeks ago.
Oh, very good. So, all right, so we know how you were using this is your job as volunteer coordinator,
yes,
to get those people out there to do these things and make these notes. So then you accumulate it all?
Yes, we accumulate all the data, and then did some number crunching with some pie charts. And basically what we found...
I love pie charts. I can understand pie charts.
They're wonderful. They're wonderful. What we found is that, we had over 1,000 dogs out here between the different parcels of land, and 82% of them were off leash. Mm-hmm. And so regardless of which, property you're on, that's against the jurisdiction, and it's not what's in the best interest for the endangered species that utilize the area. So...
Yes, so that's quite a few dogs. I mean, obviously they weren't all here at one time.
Exactly.
But I'm assuming that the 18% that were on leash are like my dog, who doesn't come when he's called, so I can't.
Exactly, same.
Although I'm sure a lot of the other dogs that were off leash probably aren't very well behaved either. But this is such a big area that you think it's harmless.
Exactly. And at another beach, it would be harmless. Leash laws should be respected, etc. But really the issue that has the agencies the most interested in knowing what's happening here are the endangered birds, and then the safety issues within the channel.
So you saw dogs. Now, did you also record interactions? I mean, are there incidents of, say, we saw this dog in with a plover in its mouth,
Yes.
running away or something.
We did do that, and like that's where it gets a little interesting. So there's this term called flushing, and flushing is when you approach something and it leaves. And when we think about it, we think of it as this big dramatic wave of birds.
Yeah, like a pheasant
fleeing.
coming up.
Exactly. And oftentimes, these birds are smarter than we give them credit for, definitely. And they will see someone with a dog from 300, 400, 500 feet away, and they'll just leave. They have no interest. So it doesn't get to the point of flushing typically, but we tracked those incidents. And within the report, I believe we had 192 incidents of dogs or people approaching the birds and the birds just leaving. And whether that was western snowy plovers or sanderlings, we didn't get into the minutia of that because identifying shorebirds is particularly tricky. But we categorized them by type. So we know if it was like a shorebird or a gull, or a tern. The terns are particularly complicated to tell apart sometimes too.
Now, can you so you say you had snapshots, but are you able to interpolate from that an even bigger picture? Say we had 182 incidents recorded in our time there, but modeling it, we find that would average out to, or have you taken it that far?
We haven't taken it that far yet. It's completely possible that someone does. We've shared all of our data with the land management agencies. And so, Coastal Commission and California State Lands Commission in particular were really interested in like what our findings were in our data, and they have the data sheet. So what their staff chooses to do with them with their advanced degrees in statistics is completely up to them, and I'm happy for them to do it.
You go.
Exactly.
Now, did you see were any reported incidents between dogs and say knocking over kids or anything like that?
No, honestly, like the dogs that are out here tend to be pretty well behaved. You do get a lot of wiggly puppies that don't listen to mom and dad. But in general, it's not dogs doing anything more than play fighting. There haven't, as I've seen, any incidences where dogs have, been aggressive in any way. So, when you come out here and there's only 3 or 4 dogs on, a Wednesday afternoon or a Wednesday morning, it's incredibly peaceful and wonderful. And then the problem really comes when you're neglecting to remember these small birds that also need to utilize this area for their success.
Did you find, as you looked at it, that there were days or times that were much busier?
Absolutely. And, I think to the surprise of no one, it tends to be weekends and evenings. If the weather is particularly nice, then you'll get, a group of friends on a weekday who maybe took the day off, and every one of them has a dog. And you get suddenly 11 dogs on the beach that are off leash, and they belong to one social group. So there were some questions about whether there was commercial use of the area by professional dog walkers, and honestly, we didn't see it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, we saw a lot of surf schools.
So you're going to continue this now?
Yes.
You got another grant.
Yes.
And the first report is on your website. Want to remind people if they want to look at it?
Yes, it's at coastkeeper.org.
And what do they look at? What's the name of it?
It's I think it's just the Santa Ana River Monitoring Report.
Okay.
And we're working on creating a whole page dedicated to the Santa Ana River project. So it should be easy to navigate to.
Great. And does Coastkeeper have any other role in this after your monitoring? I mean, that's you don't have any enforcement or interpretation, that sort of thing?
Like we do have an outreach program that's part of this that is not set up due to the ongoing construction zone behind us with the oil spill. So I am out here once. We're hoping to get out here maybe up to twice a week with an outreach table, talking about the birds, talking about, the issues of not picking up after your dog, handing out dog waste bags that are compostable. So really just out here trying to interact with the community that comes here regularly. But when it comes to enforcement or land management decisions, we are happy to leave that to the landowners.
And if somebody wanted to be part of this program, wanted to volunteer, again, do they just go to Coastkeeper website, or is there something they should look for?
They can go to Coastkeeper's website, or they can send me an email at volunteer@coastkeeper.org.
Volunteer@coastkeeper.org. Okay, well, I think it's a great program. I think obviously it's always better to have something factual rather than just what we think or we picture. And I look forward to seeing what the results are. I mean, I'm going to go look at the report myself, but also see what some of the agencies do, because I know there's been so much controversy. I mean, people wanted
Yes.
it to be a dog beach, and we're saying, no, it's not a dog beach, and it shouldn't be a dog beach because of these sensitive areas. But we, at one point at least, it was prompted to look for a second dog park, on this side of the town, but. No, can't find anybody who wants it for as a neighbor.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Somehow people don't want those in their backyards.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure that some of these people have been not happy about some of the dogs and
Yes.
everything, but that's the way it goes. Well,
Yes.
good. Well, Suzanne, thank you. I say this is an interesting report, and we can always use more facts.
No problem. Happy to be out here. And if anyone wants to volunteer, especially locals, happy to have them come out. I'm a local myself.
Okay, good. I'm really curious because we've had the oil spill, and I know people are inundated with information about the oil spill, but I'm particularly interested in just how it works when we have something like this. Who starts things? Where's the coordination? And sort of what are each of your roles? How does it all work? So who starts it?
So because it's an oil spill, it's actually run by the Coast Guard, which is tough for us sometimes because we're used to being able to just get in and do our responses.
And they go, Washington, here's a smoke signal. Can you send it back to us shortly?
Right. So it's a federal, a state, and a local response. So we were out here initially on Saturday with with the air show. And our units that were out of the air show at the end of that, they just changed that whole
Time out. Why? It's a Huntington Beach air show. Why were you out for the air show?
So we're out there as part of a mutual aid to
okay.
provide extra safety for all the boaters, a lot which come from Newport Beach.
Okay.
And so we were out there, and so as soon as the air show was ended, they switched that whole command system to trying to figure out the location of the oil spill, and that really started the response. We were here Saturday night making our emergency plans, and then early Sunday morning, Mayor Avery, City Manager Grace Leong, and I were down here and we did an assessment at first light. And so at that point we started to understand the scope. We were working with our partners in Public Works, our partners in the police department to set up the city's response. We had a call at 8:30 with all our emergency operation center crew, and really that's when the city's response initiated.
Okay, so Dave, sort of tell me how you came into it.
So we get involved, as Mike mentioned, they set up an incident command. In this case, it's the federal government. Then they touch the locals, and Mike runs that incident command. Then he starts touching the departments that are involved. Public Works is a front line on the beach, as you know. So we've got crews out here. We start communicating, what do we need, what can we do? We went right into crowd control and kind of control the situation with the lifeguards. And our staff's on the beach every day anyway, and we ended up posting signs and trying to keep people out of the water while we also work on the cleanup side. And in this case, we have certified hazmat folks on our team that wouldn't start, but we were directed by the higher ups, in this case the federal government. There's going to be a contractor coming in. As you see, we even have them out here today. So we were asked not to do cleanup. They were going to do all the cleanup, and then we've just supplemented that wherever they need to have resources applied. So in this case, we're really about crowd control and just monitoring the beach. We get a lot of calls. People tell us where we're at, and then we'll push back up through the command, and it goes back to the contractor, and then he'll deploy another 50 people. For instance, Crone tomorrow right now, we heard there's some tar balls, so there's a group over there now picking that up.
Okay, you touched on a sensitive subject, which is, all right, we've got people that know what they're doing, and yet they go, no, time out. We're going to send in a different crew. Why? I mean, what is the rationale?
So part of that, when we asked two questions of the command staff. One, can we hire our own contractors? And they said, well, no, you're not going to get reimbursed by it. Two, we've hired all, so you're not going to find it. And then we asked, can we use our own hazardous material trained staff? They said that's going to interfere with the flow of the operation. And so we deferred to them, and within a couple days, we started getting, the first day we had about 40 cleanup workers, and it's increased. The peak, I think we had about 240 cleanup workers on our beach. And so we do a survey at the end of the day to look at all the areas that need it, and that has continually been improving day by day, that once the cleanup crews come in, the beach is looking good. Once the tidal cycle goes through again, it washes up a little more oil, and so they'll come back and do it each day. But in the aggregate, the amount of oil on our beach is less and less every day.
Yeah, so, all right, so somebody else pays for the cruise then, I'm gathering, because we're not allowed to use. Were your crews ever involved?
Only to an small extent, really about crowd control signage. We do some pickup. We had people turning in tar to us, and we actually public not to do it. We were real concerned, truthfully. I mean, what happens is you have a substance like oil and tar, and they want to stick it in the public trash can, and then we're worried about that because that now contaminates that load, and the recyclables go down because it all goes to landfill. So we're trying to keep it out of the public trash cans. That was one of our notices, and that's why the crews. But there'll be another spot where we come back in. We've had tar wash up on the beach before, and after this is done, we'll surely have some residual, and our folks will pick that up. We'll just do our normal process where we find it, pick it up, so that it really is when someone steps in it, you've probably seen it, and they track it up, and now we got to power wash it off the sidewalk as they walk to the restaurant or whatever. So we try to get it before it becomes a problem.
One of my questions has been that, in fact, it was one of your lifeguard. I was doing a presentation here the other day, and someone said something about toxic waste, and he goes, no, it's not toxic, the tar stuff. Is that correct? It's not toxic?
So it's considered hazardous materials based on the petroleum product, all the different chemicals that are in it.
Okay, because I'm still having a hard time to say, okay, if I put on a pair of boots and I've got heavy rubber gloves, can't I rake a beach? And I'm not sure what kind of special training do your people go through.
Well, there's certifications. They go through 8 hours classes on how to deal with various subjects. It's about identification of subjects, how to touch it, control it, what we have to do. For instance, certain subjects we're not going to put in like a plastic because it'll melt through it. So you want to know those kind of things. And then how to dispose of it. We just don't want, again, putting it in the trash can. So there's a lot of training on that, how to approach it. If it has some kind of fumes coming off or something, you want to know, are we going to have to get breathing apparatus? A lot of volunteers just don't know that. They want to go grab it. And they also don't know, let me help you. They grab it and it's on their hand. Now it's sticky. Now they wipe it on the trash can, go over here. We appreciate the volunteers trying to get involved, but that's one of the concerns we have. And there's now a course, I think, coming up. Maybe there's a 4-hour course that we might be able to help train some volunteers for follow-up work. Hasn't been, I think, they haven't authorized that yet, but there's talk about it right now.
Yeah, I remember that from the last time, that a lot of us frustrated. But I do remember from the last time, and it doesn't seem like this time, but the American trader spill, that I remember coming down to the pier and to volunteer, and of course they didn't want me, but they had all the television cameras, and it was just a beehive of activity. And if you walked 2 blocks, there wasn't a soul on the beach. It was like, all right, who are you cleaning up for? The cameras there. But this seems to be a very thorough, you see something, you follow it, you track it.
So having been here for the American Trader, it was far worse. That the Black Keys area looked like a blacktop. And I think that there's a lot of lessons learned from the Coast Guard and the agencies that responded. So we had vessels out on Sunday, the first day, scooping oil up, which is really helpful for us because the more we can contain it out in the water, they can collect it and not let it get on our shore. They also have contractors ready to go and a response plan that's already in place for all the oil companies and transporters, so that part of it is much better. That we had to figure it out in the American Trader. Here, these plans were in place, and it was just a matter of spinning up with the lead agencies, the Coast Guard, the Office of Emergency Services, and then the responsible party.
Okay, so now, to me, it's, at least in my mind, it's pretty clear that public works, since you're in charge of cleaning the beaches anyway, that would be natural to get involved. But sort of, what is the lifeguard's role here? I mean, obviously, they will keep people out of the water if the beaches are closed, but what else were they doing?
So the primary responsibility in the early days, we had our field staff is out warning people, keeping people above the high tide line so they don't spread the spill and then out of the water because it was closed based on the safety. We've also had lifeguards up at the command post initially in Huntington, and that up at the IMT or emergency management team in Long Beach. And so we were there to advocate for the city to be able to give our information and push for the response to Newport. And so we've been in a couple different layers of it. My role is the plan section chief, so my job is to help with some of the emergency operations processes. So paperwork and getting the forms and then getting liaison with the incident command team.
You know, we think of the spills and the response as sort of, well, it's dramatic in a sense. It comes down to paperwork so often. Anything as far as problems with the public that either of you had?
I think the biggest one was keeping people out of the water, and Mike could probably share in that. And also we had tracking issues and people touching the material. The public was pretty good about it. We had a lot of folks. I had several volunteer groups call me, can we come down? And they were great about understanding and just, but I know there's a lot of energy they want to do, and we talked earlier about that. So we are also working on redirecting them to other areas they could volunteer, which helps. Again, trash pickup or something like that. But I think the public was really good in our case. There's still a few that I understand there's some surfers and folks that got in the water. They came out with their, probably wetsuits, had some stuff on it. We did have a couple power washing incidents where we followed the tracks and we just kind of cleaned it up as we went. But otherwise, I think the public did real well here.
Well, that's good. And your perspective?
So for the most part, our lifeguards really had got a good response. A few of the people were typically from out of town. They're here for a short-term rental. They came to California. They're at the beach. They look, and it looks good to them. And so that was kind of an education. And we worked with our partners in the police department, too, to do it as lightly as needed, but still be able to get people to help. The other problem is that with people in Newport Beach, they want to help, and they want to do it now. And so they wanted to clean up. They wanted to help with the wildlife. And so that was a process of educating them and respecting their energies and trying to direct it in a positive way that's not only helpful for the incident, but safe for them.
Yeah, I know that. It is frustrating. They said, I think it was Surfrider put up a line, and they had like 5,000 people almost instantly, and then nothing for them to do. And you think, what a waste of energy. But as you say, if you can turn them in another direction, or say, all right, follow this, here's some trash we need picked up or something, that would help. So.
And that's the best we can do, because it's natural for people who want to help, natural to volunteer. We have other opportunities. And again, they had trained folks out here, and luckily, as Mike said, that spill wasn't as bad as the American Trade. It was a different spill, too. We didn't get the American Trade had a lot of oil in it, where we had more tar here, which is a different subject to deal with. It wasn't, I understand Huntington Beach had a lot more of the oil where it was in the surf and real black, but I don't think we had it here. But overall, again, great to have the volunteers, great to help them, and again, just work to redirect them at this point. There'll be times in the future we'll probably maybe train some, and they can residual oil pickup for months if that's the case.
Well, now that's an idea, something in terms of, because we know that sometimes it seeps into the sand or whatever, and there are ongoing issues. So if somebody said, I understand I can't do anything right now, but consider me, would they contact Public Works, contact the fire or lifeguard, or what?
So we're looking at mobilizing our already affiliated volunteers. That would be our CERT members and our volunteer in policing. And then if you go to SoCalOilSpillResponse.com, there's a place where you can register to become a volunteer.
Okay, well, so that's good, because as I say, we need volunteers all the time for all sorts of boring things, but unfortunately it takes something like this to bring them out. Okay, so I understand now the process, and I understand how we are sort of subordinate sometimes in these to a federal agency or something, but we have all of the pieces in place to respond in any way. You could have responded at several different levels, it sounds like, both of you.
And I think that's the city, like most cities, train constantly, particularly Mike and the fire department, do a lot of the incident command. We do training and make sure we have the proper equipment where we can, but we also have the ability to call in equipment. If we had something that involved a lot of heavy equipment, we can bring our scrapers down and the big Tonka toys, basically. But if we needed more of that, we have contractors. Like, for instance, we've been working on some high tide surf down in Balboa. And our crews can only do so much because our equipment limits that. But we had contract resources we brought down, and they brought their excavators and things like that so we could respond quickly. Same thing in an emergency. Depending whether it's an earthquake, a fire, a flood, we're going to apply the appropriate resources that we need, and we can pull on other resources to do that.
So one of the advantages we had going into this, after a year of COVID, our Emergency Operations Center is well oiled. We've been used to working together. We work with our partners and have good communication with Crystal Cove within the Newport Beach, with the Huntington City, Huntington State Lifeguards, with the police. And so that really helps us serve our community by having the best information, sharing it, and really it's a cooperative process with not only the state and federal, but all the local agencies working together. And the public should be very proud of how little boundaries there are and how much cooperation there is from our agencies.
I think that's an interesting point, because what you're suggesting is this didn't just happen last week. This is something that's been in place as far as the communication and the coordination and everything.
Constant planning and training, we go through that. Yearly, we do events in our EOC, activate it, mock something, because we want to be able to respond. Some years it's a plane wreck, some years we mock a flood or something like that.
Okay, wait a minute. EOC is Emergency Operations Center.
Yeah, and that's our standard training at least once a year on that, and then we do smaller intervals. I know the fire department's always training on that because they're in that field of incident response. We a little less. We don't have as many incidents. They're daily or probably less than that. But it's the training, and it's just getting people used to it. So when something happens like this, it's a terrible thing, but it's not like people are really getting concerned on our side, freaking out because they don't know what to do. As Mike said, they set up a system. There's an incident command. It starts bringing in the resources it needs, builds that pyramid up to respond to it. And then it collapses the same way as we're starting to get to the point where there's less tar. We'll see less people. We'll have less meetings, and my staff will go back to more of their regular duties and less beach observation cleanup. And right now we just opened the beaches, so we're not now working on crowd control anymore.
Okay, yeah, but is the water open again?
So as of yesterday at 2 o'clock, all our beaches are open, including the water and below the high tide line. We ask that people limit their time below the high tide line just as the residual product comes up, that we don't want them spreading that.
Yeah, let's do a whole program, I think, sometime on the Emergency Operations Center, because most of the people don't realize that we have something set up that if we all go to I think it's police headquarters, at least it was when I was on
the new Civic Center now.
in the new Civic Center. And what I learned because all of the council members are briefed on it, and what I learned was that our role is to sit there because you guys are all the trained professionals and you've got all this stuff working, and we are going to nod at you and say, yes, go ahead.
Well, and the council's the policymakers, so the big decisions are made and they say implement, and folks like Mike and I are, okay, let's go take care of that. They told us to implement cleanup actions and take whatever needs. Here's the financial resources you need to get the contractors on board, et cetera. So there's a role for council, there's a role for the incident command, in this case Mike, and there's a role for the folks, the planning section, the operations sections below them to do their roles.
So I think that's to me, that's the biggest takeaway, is that we have a system in place. It can be an oil spill, it could be something else, hopefully. I mean, we don't want them. We don't want these things to occur. We don't want a fire in Buck Gully, for example. But when they do occur, we've done our best to prepare for them, and all of you guys are talking to each other a lot so that we can be on the get-go.
And even though we're currently responding, on Monday, we drilled on a wildfire. And so we're just ready for whatever the next thing. And if it's a wildfire, a tsunami, flooding, or something unexpected, we still have those same elements that all the rest of the city can come together, and we understand the process, and we just apply focus on whatever the issue is at hand.
Well, thank you both. I think this is very interesting, and I think that it gives people who are watching a sense of a greater security to know that how well we handle this from the beginning, that we were right there from the get-go, as I say, and that's so important, but that the coordination between not just the departments in the city, because we always worry about the silos. We hear about, A doesn't talk to B. Well, obviously you guys are talking, and you're not only talking to each other, but you're talking to your fellows in the neighboring cities and the county and at the state and federal level. So thank you so much for that, and thank you guys for your good response.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Well, that's our show. Hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, let's all work on making our village green.